We're really delighted that you're here, and we're also really excited about the launch of the Masters. By the way, we have another launch downtown in the upcoming months. We'll let you know about that. But so we have kind of a two-pronged movement attached to our Master's certificate. There's a couple of things I'd like to talk about. The first is what Megan and I have noticed over the years is that while the word innovation kind of does come and go in the language and has sometimes a very fluid kind of meaning, more and more we are finding it landing as a business imperative. I would argue that innovation isn't quite as fluid as it once was, and that it is on almost the dashboard of almost every organization we work with. So it's kind of made a move from being a soft kind of fluid word into something that really matters in organizations. So it's not surprising then that we're launching a Masters. This morning, I was reading, I still read newspapers. Anyone else still read newspapers, or am I the only one? Okay, good. I was looking through my newspapers, and I was looking through my feed. And one of the things that struck me as I was going through things is that if you look at any business section of any publication in any modality, what you see and what you hear is all about innovation, whether or not it is named as such. So you hear, you read about Alibaba and Jack Ma leaving. That's the main architect of Alibaba. Very interesting. You hear about Alibaba and Amazon and Apple. You hear about every A company that there is. And then you hear about small startups. And then you read about leadership and changing patterns and practices in leadership. And then you read about how people have to internally change if they're externally offer. And so innovation is in kind of the DNA of the business language and the business practice. And we have this hugely changing environment. So, and did anyone see this? Like, the minute it's like Time is talking about creativity, I don't know about you, but I expect Wired to talk about creativity. So, I mean, it's definitely kind of in the DNA and in the zeitgeist. So one of the things that happens in this environment is if you are Megan and I, who are co-program directors of the Center of Excellence, as many of you know, in innovation management, great, is the question we have to ask ourselves is, how can we better help leaders meet these challenges? I mean, that's really our aim. How can we add value? How can we help? And as you might know, we have had the Center of Excellence in Innovation Management has been around for about 10 years now. The Certificate in Strategic Leadership and Innovation is one of the flagship programs that SEEC offers. And Megan and I have been really attentive to our participants. So you're constantly having a dialogue about the strength of the program we offer, great, and then what else is needed. So what else is needed in the environment at large, but more specifically, what else are you finding as leaders you need? And so we take that information, and our answer to it is the Master's Certificate. So it's a Master's Certificate in Innovation Leadership within our center. What better place for that to be than in York University, Schulich School of Business, executive education, with a huge reputation for innovation and work in the business community. So we're delighted to be here and to be offering this. And as many of you know, Megan and I have many decades of experience in this field. We're not telling you how much. Just saying, okay? And we want to bring that to bear, the huge network. So we want to talk about innovation, and we want to talk about how it can help, and we want to talk about the Masters, and then we are going to talk about Megan's book. So it's a fantastically rich experience we're going to have in the next hour and a half or so. But to begin, you're here because innovation is interesting to you in some kind of way. Great. And so we'd like to know what you're thinking about when you're thinking about innovation. So here is the challenge. Great. You two are going to have a discussion. Okay, there we go. Great. Good. Nick and Ice. Now, this is Ice, by the way. And Ice's last name begins with a T. So if you ever want to think about her, Ice T. It's fantastic. Okay. There we go. I love that, Ice. Okay, you too. There we go. And good. Oh, that's interesting. You too. Great. All right. And the three of you. Okay, here's your challenge. Okay, here's your challenge. Here's what we're going to ask you to do. We want you to just take a minute, have a discussion, brainstorm how the item you, here you go, Alan, just for you. The item on your card is like leading innovation. So for example, leading innovation is like a minivan because, give me some ideas. Leading innovation is like a minivan because?
Put everyone inside it.
Because there's a motley crew needed that fits inside a minivan, like a hockey league. Andrew, how is innovation like a minivan?
Because it creates a new class of vehicle.
Beautiful, right? Do you remember the story about minivans? No one wanted them at the beginning, and now what would we do without them? So fantastic. Okay, you've got 3 minutes to talk to your partner and brainstorm ways that that card is like a minivan, or like, here we go. Innovation. Leading innovation is like sailing. Who has sailing? Sailing. Innovation is like sailing because? Okay, give us both. It's like sailing.
The sailing is because the focus on the leading innovation, so it implies you captain as a skipper, not necessarily, of course, but constantly you're at the mercy of the weather. The weather is
This is fantastic.
engine,
Got
and
it.
therefore the weather's unpredictable, so you obviously make a decision on a point of sale. You have to change that because the weather
fantastic.
changes constantly. So the constant change is the norm.
It's beautiful.
And therefore, you have
Isn't it?
to adapt,
It's
modify
great.
constantly, which is the norm. So it's sort of like you have to get things done. Things happen very quickly on the water, extremely quickly, and therefore you have to be aware of situations.
That's
based on your
beautiful.
experience, training, and knowledge.
Thank you.
Others.
That's great. Oh my goodness. And from a sailor, do you think? From a sailor, do you think? So I love this idea at the heart of it, which is really about resilience and the ability to work with what you have and building on that. Fantastic. You have a second one. Go.
It's a lot easier when the wind's behind you. When
Nice. It's really nice when the wind's behind you. It's fantastic. Ain't that the truth? There we go. Okay, leading innovation is like a space shuttle. Oh, okay, Ice.
So leading innovation is like a space shuttle because it's like a vehicle that connects everything that will bring us to the unknown. It is called
Lovely.
It's called the unknown.
Oh, nice. Nick, what do you have?
It was in line with that. It's our vehicle for connectivity. Our society has changed drastically over the years. We can buy online. We can see storms manipulating with a live status down south. So without that technology, we go back to, what was it, the 80s? Without cell phones and computers, that sort of thing? I don't
Tried
know.
to set
So,
that
you know,
before. Right.
When I was a kid, so it's drastically changed. This was a vehicle for that technology to blossom.
That's fantastic. And just this idea, something that we talk about a lot, is how technology is actually an enabler. Does not equal innovation. It is the enabler of innovation. Creativity is the input. Technology is the enabler. Very interesting. Thanks. That's great. Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you said that, but sometimes it blows up.
Yeah.
Innovation is like that because sometimes even the best laid plans, stuff happens.
It's
right?
true.
You always need contingency.
So good. Okay, leading innovation is like a garden. Now there's a different metaphor.
We talked about how gardens work because they're interconnected. Your bees get pollen and everything else. And innovation is like that because it needs
A system.
interconnection of
That's
different
true.
ideas and different
That's
species.
lovely.
You can't just go down a linear path.
That's great.
Yeah.
And Megan?
I had said because you don't always know the difference between weeds and sometimes
Yes.
you let them grow to figure out what's worthwhile, and then sometimes the weeds actually have flowers, so it gets really confusing. Innovation is not always clear like that. You need time to see how things evolve and how a garden looks.
It's It's fantastic, fantastic. Kind of that period of incubation becomes really important in innovation. Lovely.
I think it's also killing the weeds quickly, early.
Well, if you know their weeds. If you know their weeds. Right.
My phone knows those weeds.
Oh, you got it that way.
You've got the weed app. Has everyone seen that? Do you garden?
No.
There's an app that'll tell you if it's a weed or not. Okay, just saying. Okay, your life can be easier. All right. Leading innovation is like deep sea fishing.
Okay, so we had that.
Good.
So you never know what you're going to get. Have to go to uncharted territories.
Nice.
And it could be scary and risky, but always an opportunity for big rewards.
Nice. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. And, I mean, in the end, you can eat sushi. Just saying. Very important. That's great. Thank you. Leading innovation is like Jurassic Park. Shelley, James, what do we got?
It's about trying things like that have never been done before.
Oh yeah, like Jurassic. Yeah.
Jurassic Park. Sometimes it's successful. Sometimes it's a lot less successful. So, pick your customers.
We also
Okay.
thought about it from the point of view of making the movie itself, and, and the innovation that went into the movie and the digital effects and the sound, and kind of brought back the monster movie again. Right? So.
It did. It a very interesting idea how very often innovation is something that has come back in a new form, right? I mean, you'll have people, organization, they'll say, haven't we tried that before, but not in this climate with this DNA. Very interesting, right? Great. Yes?
Do you remember the first film where they say innovation is like, because sometimes it eats lawyers and accountants.
That is great. Do I have a lawyer or accountant in the room? Okay. Yes?
It's also that technology has changed the game. If you think of them not as dinosaurs, but as the way technology changed film.
Right.
They really, the technology angle changed the game.
Completely. So good. Great. And last but not least, leading innovation is like a circus. Okay. What have we got, Michael?
So it's leading it's just like a circus because there's so many different attractions that work together to really create that circus experience. It also calls upon you to be able to adapt quickly and to use it based on a different game. So there's different strengths that you have to call upon, whether it's using muscle, whether it's using your brain, whether it's using your hand-eye coordination.
Nice.
So it brings everything together.
Nice. So actually thinking in terms of the internal workings of the circus. Does anything else come to mind for anyone else around circus, or did you have something? Do you have something additionally, Christine?
In terms of it's a chaotic orchestration.
It sure looks like it's a chaotic orchestration. So nice, right? You've got to be kind of prepared for that uncertain piece.
I would also say that there's risk. See,
good.
So you hope you've got a safety net, you may not, but it's just part of that.
All services were mobile, and they went to where audiences were.
Very interesting.
So innovation must go find where there is a need for innovation, because you can't innovate across everything.
That's absolutely
So you've got to find where
right.
the promising elements are.
Nice. That's right. Ringley Brothers used to go
Yeah.
all across the, remember that? Or, yeah, all across the, you know what? It's great. I'd say, remember that? And you go, sure, Leanne. Yeah, I remember Ringley Brothers. Right, yeah. The thing that comes to mind for me is the changing business model. And this idea of what scarcity of resource does. If you think of Cirque du Soleil, right? The resource for movement and for animals and for all those things, we strip that out and now we have an entirely different thing to offer, and how interesting that is attached to innovation. So when we think about leading, we're really aware of the broad range of challenge we face and how it can appear in so many different ways. So what we're thinking about when we think about it is, and then you think about that and you think about financial return. I mean, we're all in business here, for the most part, yeah? And what you're interested in is how innovation can drive performance. I mean, that's why we would come to a master's certificate, right, in innovation. This is yesterday from McKinsey. And I just thought it was interesting because it actually starts tracking in a really deep way the link between creativity and financial performance. And my argument would always be that if the word is soft, what we need is a good business case. And the more research we have attached to that, the better for our organizations to make that case. The other thing we know, again, this is a McKinsey poll in 2017, is 84% of leaders say innovation is a high priority. It's very important. Yet, 94% are dissatisfied with their firm's innovation performance. Okay, so my question to you is, why do you think that is? They say it's really important, and yet I'm dissatisfied. Yeah, Nick.
I think it's time allocation. We're just so busy, we're getting pulled in so many directions, at least from a municipal point of view.
Yeah.
You're just trying to do your daily job. Innovation takes time. You need to sit down. You need to have open, organic discussions. For us, it's time commitment. We're just trying to provide all these services, and we don't have the time.
So there's a disconnect between your busyness and what you perceive to be the time necessary to do it, and so leaders are dissatisfied with the results because they're not having that quite clear. Yeah?
Executives set goals and particular targets always higher and higher, and inevitably more than half, perhaps most of the time in most organizations, those goals and targets are not met, which leads to their dissatisfaction and frustration.
Okay. Could be. So it can happen.
I think it normally happens and is expected to happen so that the goals and targets, we're talking about major goals and targets, not like minor, things, so that are more often than not met. So that fuels the dissatisfaction. It also makes them defensive because they have to defend themselves to the board or to the shareholders or whatever, and they say, you set this goal and it wasn't met. So it makes them more vulnerable.
Okay, so it's a really interesting point if there's a gap between what I promise and what I deliver, and in some cases that certainly happens. James?
Just to go along with that,
yeah.
I don't disagree, but I also think there is no transparency or mapping between those high-level strategic goals and what innovation is delivering, and the tactical or tangible benefits of an innovative project, or any project for that matter. So we are all chasing the same nickel at the end of the day, and it's all about allocation, and they're BS financial models that allocate that. So until you unwind that, I don't really see this equation changing.
A really key component. Plus, we talk to leaders who look out and see small startups doing what they could never do, simply because of the legacy they hold and the number of people involved, etc. It's really hard to. And you go, I'm not like those guys can do it, and then you look around your own organization. It's very challenging. What were you going to say, Alan?
Quick story, but the headline is risk. The story was, we're the municipality yesterday. And the leading councillor, who's been acclaimed, so he doesn't have to go through the election, said, you've got to understand, in government, we don't like risk. How do you create innovation in a don't like risk environment? And it's why governments have a major problem with innovation.
I'm not going to have deep discussion on this. I just kind of wanted if that's okay, kind of top line attached to why it might be. And there's many reasons. Some of them having to do with the gap, some of them having to do with metrics. Like, what are we measuring and how is that system working? And then things like risk. Yes, I
think it's also more on, sorry for using the term agile, but it's not being agile, but how we get to the end goal faster. Because, like, for example, if we have this strategic plan and then it reaches us as like 10 years down the line, your innovation would already be the innovation of yesterday rather than being the innovation of today. So it's more of doing things faster in having smaller steps towards the end goal, and all these red tapes or politics inside.
Interesting.
So I guess that's what we're
part of what you're coming up against. Shelley? Yeah.
It's really with the nimbleness of organizations is that we do have a lot of legacy, and it's hard to change all of that to get everybody to move in to that direction, and there's a cost of remediating or getting rid of that legacy, and sometimes we're not willing to bear that cost.
Right. And if there's governmental costs and then there's organizational costs when you have quarters, for example. right? In this quarter, what can we do? These are really fascinating questions, and they're the questions that as leaders we ask and then say, what can we do? Like, how can we work within our purview or systemically to make those differences? So we're really, really interested in that. There's other things that we know. This is from a Global Mail survey. 88% of it, so same kind of thing, executives say it's important, but what we know is this. Only 33% say they are effective for many of the reasons that we've talked about, and only 22% have any formal innovation process. So for organizations that tend to be process heavy, like if I talk to any of you, you go, we have more processes than we know what to do with, right? We are innovation process deficient. It's fascinating to me, right? So this is part of the challenge we have. How can we change the things within our purview? When the rate of change, this is a Jack Welch quote that we like, when the rate of change inside an institution becomes slower than the rate of change outside, the end is in sight. It's only a question of when. And so there's really imperatives. And the imperatives are across the spectrum of innovation. It's not only how do we offer to the marketplace, it's also how do we change internally, right? What does that look like and how can we do it? And a lot of the challenges that we've discussed. So we are working and have worked to develop the Master's Certificate in Innovation Leadership. You have it in your folder. Good. I don't want you looking at it. It's there for you to preview, to take a look at. And it's really a Master's Certificate for a leader who is working in any size. So many of the people who come to our program might be working kind of departmentally or in a business unit. Sometimes they're working across the system. So there's a range of requirements, and we want to make sure that we have an offering that meets that. So if you have a mandate to do any of this, strategies, values, etc., that's why the program was delivered. And it's really not about innovation for innovation's sake. We need business results, as was said. So how can we work effectively to deliver them? How can we have metrics that make sense as opposed to either big or too small? Like, where do they live for us? So our master's certificate it's an innovation leadership. It is 3 5-day programs. Module 1 is our kind of flagship foundational program. The Certificate in Leadership and Innovation. And this has a broad, it's over 5 days. There are 10 different units, as many people here know, and it touches on all the key elements that you might need to be aware of if you're going to go back with your team, for example, and innovate. When we talked to our participants, there were 2 areas that they were, for the most part, particularly interested in. One was, we're calling it Design Thinking 2.0 because it's not simply design thinking. It is what we were originally calling an innovator's toolkit. When we talked to people, there were kind of 2 areas within this that leaders were looking for. One is hands-on, what do you do? And 2, how does it all fit? So a systemic approach with a really good tactical base. Is that fair? How would you describe it, Megan?
Yeah, I think that's some people need just more robust learning in particular areas to be effective leaders. And this was one of the areas we really felt was a differentiator, both from what we saw in class and from what we know around what people do with their skills afterwards. So.
Right. And I don't know if you've noticed, but more and more in organizations that you wouldn't traditionally think of as design-driven, we're hearing this language. There was an article in Walmart. They now have, did you see that? There's in Walmart, there is they've hired a design thinker to look at everything they do, and from process through to process. So very interesting. So it's kind of, it's on people's radar. So we have a 5-day program for that. And the other, because the research we have, so for example, one of the people we work with is here. His name is Andrew Maxwell. He's there. Go like this, Andrew. There we go. Andrew is affiliated with Lassonde Engineering, and he is both an entrepreneur and an innovator. He has done great work in the area of culture, for example. And one of the things we know is if you want an organization that's actually going to innovate, trust is essential. And so then you start looking at that and thinking about that and considering what your culture looks like and what it might look like if we could put some mechanisms in place. And so we have a 5-day program that looks at culture that innovates and executes. So just to be clear, we are not talking about looking at your organization and saying, how can it become Google? Right? What we are saying is, how do we create a culture that can actually innovate? So not necessarily an innovative culture, if you know what I mean, but rather a culture that innovates and actually executes. So those are very specific and different things. And we're looking to do that over a 5-day period with some fantastic professors and instructors and thought leaders. So in a snapshot, that's what those 3 modules look like. This gives you a deeper sense of what is covered in each. So many people in this program have taken the Certificate in Strategic Leadership and Innovation, and as you can see, it's a broad range of material, all with specific components that work together to offer a kind of holistic approach to innovation. Module 2, as we've discussed, is design thinking. It's certificates and tools and techniques with a user-centered approach. And we have, as has been mentioned, so we'll look at all those tools. Anything you want to say about that? We good?
The other thing, is anybody in here interested in design thinking? A few people? Yeah, so design thinking really only covers one part of the spectrum of when you innovate. So this actually has a real breadth of, actually when you have a challenge, how do you make sure that you look at what comes before and after the design thinking elements of it. And we're very proud, Andrew Maxwell is actually one of the professors who will be teaching in the program. We partnered with Lassonde for it. It is such a hot topic at most organizations, which is really about that user-centered design. So we're thrilled to be able to offer this one, in particular because we know just how important not only it is today, but it's going to be as your leaders are starting to, you know, it's almost like you can get ahead of the curve in some organizations by having this kind of background, which is just taking things up a notch in terms of the way that you approach your projects and the way that you solve for those challenges.
That's great. Good. Thank you. Good. And then the third, as discussed, has to do with the culture piece. And again, I'll mention in a moment who some of our instructors are, but it's really about not only how do you create a culture, but how do you lead one. We include, as we do in our 5-day innovation site visits, but they're very different than the ones who are in our strategic leadership. And we are talking about the power of intrapreneurship because most of the people who come on the program work internally. James, for example, that's a huge piece you have to do about making all that happen. And so we're really aware of that, want to do that. And we also are inviting leaders of innovative organizations in, but not for a panel. What we're going to do is we're going to have a very different way for people to interact with them to learn. So it's going to be very direct, very hands-on, because Megan and I are not fond of panels. You know, like how many people can I listen to talk about stuff? So what does this relate to in terms of what you need? And so we're going to be using them for a day, and then we're going to wrap all that together. So that's the 3 days with very specific. Here are some of our, Megan and I are program directors, as you know. We have a range of instructors. Jim Harris, many of you know, is a best-selling author, published in 80 countries, and speaks on disruption. Dr. David Weiss is an award-winning facilitator, works with many different organizations, has a fabulous mind attached to innovation, and is a great teacher. Lib Gibson, CEO of previous CEO of which company? Global.
When it was a Bell subsidiary.
Bell. I always think Bell.
Innovation
right?
Bell.
And fantastic insight and hands-on experience having done that. Rob Lajoie has worked with organizations across the spectrum actually implementing innovation. So his hard-won lessons are fantastic. We have Dr. Andrew Maxwell, who looks just like his picture, just saying. And then we have a range of people that we bring in, and they come, and depending on what exactly we're doing, Elizabeth Huggins, for example, has worked in creative problem solving, so she's a great resource in that area. Shane Saunderson.
Shane used to be a VP at Idea Couture, which is a special design thinking firm. He'll be teaching the design thinking program, and he is actually doing his PhD in robotics.
Right, so it's really interesting.
He's has a really great lens on global trends and specializes in insights and how we bring that into usefulness, basically, in organizations.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. And then we have guest speakers. And so some of our guest speakers are people who have a very specific niche in some area of innovation where it's helpful. And others are people who have taken the program, have used the tools in the first flagship program, and speak about their innovation successes. So Matt O'Leary actually works with Carrot, which is anyone here familiar with Carrot? It's nudge technology? No? Okay, it's an app. If you don't get it, if you don't have it, get it. Okay, Carrot is a health and well-being app that gives you air mile points. Every time you open it up, take a quiz, read something, watch a 10-second clip, it's a fantastic technology. It's just great. And it moves people forward toward health. I love it. Plus, I get an air mile point. Anyone else? You know that we're the biggest point collectors in the world. Okay, we're in the world. We love points. I don't know, I love points. So Matt is one of the architects of that, and he has come in and spoken at a number of our programs. Dr. Catherine Parker, Rehab Solutions, so worked in government and in healthcare, making changes, very interesting. Brendan Schultz is over here, right? Yeah, he's in charge of student engagement, student services, fantastic speaker. Audrey Carr works in digital and has come in and talked to us about what's changing in that area. So we have this is just some of the people who work in our program, but we wanted to give you a sense that we work from both academic to people with deep business experience and application. So nice kind of range. We have many innovation site partners so that we go and visit around culture. These are but some of them. Lassonde is a new addition, and it's been going it's so interesting. People love it. Lassonde is actually on this campus, right? And they have a beautiful building if you haven't been. So come join the class, and we'll take you over. Okay. Good reason to. So each of these people have a different approach to innovation and how it works for their culture, and that's what makes it really interesting. So we have that. And we also this is to give you a sense for the richness of the experience. In other words, Megan and I are learning specialists. That's what we do. And so you don't sit in a room for 5 or 15 days listening to talking heads. It's about application and implication and making a difference. And so we have lots of different experiences, and our participants say, great things, which we take very seriously, and want to ensure that you have that experience too. So why us? Well, a number of reasons. First of all, we're the only master's certificate in innovation leadership in Canada. We have an outstanding faculty. If you look through any other, though we don't urge you to do this, but if you were to look competitively, you would see that the quality of our instructors is superb and really relevant. We have a lot of experiential learning. So again, not just academic, exposure to best in class. We have a true focus on application. And we have, one of the things that we offer is we offer free coaching. A couple of people have taken us up on it in this room. We have a 2-hour consultation piece. So once you take our program and you start doing it and you think, what do I do with that? Call us and we'll help you through it. And we have a lot of fun because we're fun. In case there's any doubt. Great. So we are really happy you're here. We're eager to help in any way we can. And does anyone have any questions? Is there anything about it that either the course or any of the days that's interesting, you have an interest in or want to know something about? We answered every question. James?
Is it important what order you do this?
No. So, here's the other thing. We don't have that, do we? I wonder why not. Okay, to speak to this, if you have already taken one of the programs, so you take the 5 days, that is a given for the masters. So now you just need the other 2, and then you get the masters, and you can take them in any order, and we expect you to take it within, I think, 2 years? 2 years. So if you can do that, that would be great, and then you'll get your master's certificate. The other thing I want to say is there is no other master's certificate in Canada, or one actually that we've seen almost anywhere. So it, as a credential, it's really quite relevant and important.
Sorry, 2 years from when you took the first one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also,
But if it's 2 years, 1 month or something, no worry.
Okay, and then there's the
and
cost.
we only have 3 people here, I think, who've taken the program. But there is a special pricing available for you. So we can talk about that offline. But just so you know that it's you've already paid for one, so in fact, to take the other 2 is really an excellent opportunity. But we won't bore other people with that.
Right, and we'd be delighted to help in any way we can with that. Great, good. Anything else? Anything we can help you with?
Any comments from our past graduates of some of our programs? James, Sarah?
Oh, here, why don't we put you on the spot? Let's see how agile you are.
The first course was a great experience. It was there was a lot of practical application in it, and the cohort I was in was a fairly diverse group of people. I work in financial services, so there was a lot of financial services, but it wasn't just surrounded by a bunch of bankers. There was some medical, some municipal government, a few others.
Yeah, and you were in quite a large class, if I remember.
It was
right?
It was a large class.
We had a range.
It was. I actually think it was a good size class. I wouldn't want it to be much larger than it was, but
pretty well the max. Right. And it's always interesting to us because even if, so for example, we had about, I think, at least 25% of the course was financial services for that one, but everyone was in a completely different area. And so really, you could have been in a lot of those areas in any organization, so it was really kind of interesting that way. Sarah?
And a lot of rich dialogue, and I still go back to what I learned. I have all my notes and everything in one binder in my office, and I always go back to look at it and talk to my team about it and talk to my leadership about it as well, about that innovation piece, because I work in the college system, and I mean, innovation is, sometimes looked at as, well, we can't do that. We have so many constraints and restrictions, but we can if we look at it in a different way. So, I'm constantly going back to that content and thinking about those dialogues that we had and the experiences. So
that's wild. You actually have the binder. Because we have this conversation all the time. Do people really use a binder? Do you know?
I do.
Apparently they do.
It's old school, but it's
right?
definitely like I go back to that content. Yeah.
That's really good to know. Thank you. Shelley, what was your experience?
So I really liked it because I really like the thought leadership, particularly when we heard the speech from Jim, right? Who just really talked about putting 2 different things together and coming up with a whole new business model and a new dynamic. And that for me was really kind of like, wow, right? So when I went back to my office, it's sort of like looking at things that we do. It's like, why do we do it like this? Like this, why can't we change this? We don't have to abide by this. We can change this. So starting to drive a little bit of change through my own organization. So
that's great. Good. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for coming. And for all those who don't know, you have a great treat right now because you're going to hear from Megan about her new book. Is that exciting? Okay, so what we're going to do is, if we can help you in any way, let us know. And you're going to take a moment to...
Yeah, we're just waiting to switch computers, so we're just going to take, 2 or 3 to 5 minutes max, just for you to get a coffee, and we will
we'll regroup. Oh, and Alan.
One more point before we finish the first part. This can be offered in the organisation as well, as a whole program within the organisation. And that's often valuable, because if you talk about changing the culture, if you talk about setting up a system and a process for doing it, often you need that a group to have gone through similar experiences, and that can be good.
No, it's a great point. Good, thank you. Thank you all.
3-minute break.
Great, 3-minute break?
One question?
Yes,
It's at this facility? It's not the downtown campus, or either?
Combination.
it's a combo
It's
pack.
combo.
Depends which one you take. We offer them both with both.
And we tend to offer them in both,
Traveling's easier.
okay, we tend to offer them in both places, and sometimes they'll be here, sometimes you can kind of pick and
For
choose.
5 days is always in one location, this one for downtown.